If you really are serious about the things that are on there and living a big life, then we have to have this question in our mind of who do I need to be to become that person? So, curiosity, right? This is called the Think Bigg-er Event. I'm going to move on you guys today a little bit. And when I put this together, the motivation was to spark a passion of mine and to spark some interest in you guys about creating a really big life and thinking bigger for yourself. And when I talk like this, right, a lot of people think like of that. Rainbows and unicorns, and that's really cool, Keith, and Think Big, and it's imaginary and it's la-la land, right? So today I want to talk about what it looks like in reality. And to start off with that, I really want to talk about like why it's important to think big. Albert Einstein, arguably one of the smartest human beings who's ever lived, right? He says, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that we use to create them. And that's a quote I heard a long time ago and has always resonated with me. And when you think about it, it kind of transcends a lot of various situations. And it's the analogy that I always like to give to people is if you meet a homeless person on the street or a hungry person and you want to feed them, right, or clothe them, and you want to figure out how to help them, automatically you framed your mind to helping this person. We'll call him Bob, right? So I automatically want to help feed Bob or clothe Bob. And really, if I were to expand my mindset into how would I feed and clothe every homeless person in Spokane, right? How would I feed and clothe every homeless person in the United States? How would I rid the world of hunger? That sort of mindset might be exactly what it is that helps Bob with his hunger. But when we frame the question into Bob, our mindset shrinks, right? And so when we look at life and when we look at business and we look at things, the first question that I talk to people about is, when I hire new agents that work for me or when I'm looking at new business ventures and I'm talking to people, I'm listening to how they think, right? I'm listening to how they process. Does the world happen externally to them, right? Are they playing defense? Does the world happen and I react? Are they proactive? Do they think big? Do they think small? So I'm curious, and I just want to take a really quick question to pull this group because this is called Think Big. Why are you guys here? Like when you saw this, what provoked the interest? Who's got the shot? Knowledge? Knowledge? And what about knowledge?
Gain as much as possible.
Just more knowledge.
So you use that knowledge to apply it towards action.
Yeah, action. I like that. Who else? Matthew.
I've been to a lot of events that are a lot like this, and hearing it from your perspective, I was curious about. Maybe I could pull something different from it.
You just want my spin on it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Why else? What interests you guys about thinking bigger? Yeah.
I was interested in how you go about teaching and explaining so that I can do a better job of teaching and explaining it to other people or encouraging other people to think bigger and why.
I love that. And I will be honest and transparent with you and tell you that almost everything you hear and see today is not my idea, right? It's things that were passed down to me. I had a very, very, very good opportunity when I was younger, and I had really good mentors and really good coaches, and a lot of these ideas were really what sparked interest in me, and they've just been passed down, right? Where's Joy? Joy, can you do me a favor? Can you see that kill that overhead music? Business music. Oh, kill it. Kill it. Just kidding. I think the overhead music's still playing. I don't know. It's just distracting. Sorry. Good. So, today I want to talk to you guys about thinking big. And I really want you guys to understand that when you leave this room tonight, like my goal is not just to get you thinking bigger, but it's to get you an action plan. It's to get you from point A to point B. How do I take an idea and get from where I am to where that is? Does that make sense? So when I think about thinking bigger, I think about why it's important, and then I also think about why people don't think bigger. This is a quote from a gentleman I follow. Many of you maybe have heard of Gary Vee. When he says, you're addicted to people telling you you're pretty, to people telling you you're talented, to teachers telling you you're a good student, to opinions. The reason so many struggle with negativity is because they overvalue positive reinforcement. And the truth is that we oftentimes don't think big because we're afraid, right? We're scared. We're scared of what that might mean. Oftentimes because if we choose to live a really big life and big ideas, you automatically are going to attract the critics, right? That's what happens. Simultaneously, I have a philosophy and I have a theory that when the people around you tell you not to do something, right? When you're a little kid, you're about to touch a hot stove, or they say, don't touch it, right? It's because they care for you, right? It's genuinely because they care for your well-being and they don't want to see you get hurt. But what happens in life sometimes is that we come up with really great and really big and really fantastic ideas, and then the people closest to us do what? Shut us down, right? Or they just want to really protect us, right? Like, I don't know if you want to do that. Some of us tried before, didn't work so well for me, right? But the reality is that we get fearful. And so we have to learn to think without fear. We have to take moments in our life, we have to take time, and we have to step back, and we have to think without fear. What that means is it means setting the time aside. So you don't have to raise your hand, but just think about this in the sense, like, how many of you have been out of school for a significant amount of time, right? Which means that you're not in a proactive state of learning or going to school or having somebody teach you. So let me ask you this question. When was the last time that you were challenged with not only thinking bigger, but with the way that you were currently thinking? Right? How many times do we set time aside in our life, because our lives get busy, to think not only about thinking bigger, but about how we're currently thinking? So a little bit of a backstory, right? I promise you I didn't bring you here to talk about myself for 2 hours. Only an hour and 58 minutes. A little bit about a backstory, who I am and why I'm doing this. I have a passion for business development, I have a passion for people. But the truth is I'm a Spokane native. I grew up here, and I'm passionate about helping the local community, right? I truly believe in Spokane. I want to make Spokane a bigger, better place. So I was born on a wheat and hay farm in Eastern Washington, not too far from here. And I had loving parents. That's me and my mom. She loves me the most. I have 2 brothers. She doesn't love them nearly as much as me. Although there's one in this room, he might debate that. And I was born the middle child of 3 brothers, and you could probably say that affected who I am a little bit. I speak 4 languages: English, profanity, sarcasm, and real shit. I am going to swear. I apologize if that offends you. I can't stop it. Truth be told, I grew up on a working wheat hay farm, and the only reason I bring this up is because it dovetails into what I'm about to talk to you about, which is my own personal life philosophy that I call MS4. And the reason that this came about is that when you grow up on a farm, right, at a very young age, you have to work, right? And I remember when I was about 14 or 15 years old, I didn't really want anything more in life than to be an adult. I just wanted to be older. You guys remember that when you were a kid? I don't know, they say like the Peter Pan syndrome, stay young forever. All I ever wanted to be was older. And the reality is, a lot of it is I wanted to be older because I wanted to be able to contribute to my family unit, right? We had a working wheat hay farm, but it was family run and owned and operated. So when I was able to contribute, I then portrayed value, right? I had value to my family, right? So at 14 or 15 years old, they put a pitchfork in your hand, they put you in the hayfield. But I distinctly remember my dad, we used to have these really big tractors. You guys maybe have seen these big tractors. They have dual tires on both sides. And I remember he would take us out into a field and he would fire the tractor up. And the tractors have a clutch and you can shift it into gear. And then they had hand throttles, right? So you would rev up a tractor, and they didn't have speedometers, but they had RPMs, right? Rotations per minute. And I remember my dad would take me out at 14 or 15 years old, and the seats in these tractors had springs. Remember like your bus driver seat did? They just kind of like bounce around, right? And I remember that my feet could not touch the brake, and I could not touch the clutch. But my dad would put it in gear, and he would start it, and he would cut in the first 2 or 3 laps of a big wheat field, like a 200-acre wheat field, just so I was away from like fences and telephone poles and stuff that I probably would hit. And then he would lug that thing down with the throttle, so it was almost kind of hopping and skipping. And then he would open the door, and I remember right before he'd open the door, he'd take his finger, and he'd lick the tack, and he would tell me, like, when I jump out, this is where you put the throttle. And he would jump out the door, and I would throttle that thing up, and I would plow, right? And I would plow these big wheat fields when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I couldn't touch the pedals, but he'd just say, hey, if you get scared, turn the key off, okay? And it's like, see you at lunch. And it's a cool memory, but the reason I bring it up is that it was through that process that I learned about work, but I didn't call it work, right? So many gurus these days talk about work-life balance, right? And when I grew up, it was really about work-life integration. See, on a farm, work is your life and your life is your work, but you don't dissect it that way. I didn't come home at night and my mom never said, how was work today, son? Right? It wasn't considered work, it was your life. So as I was able to start building a real estate business and a real estate career, one of the things that I would challenge you to look at is, how does your work-life integration look? In other words, can you stop the process of constantly dissecting work from family, from fun? And can you start to integrate them, right? So that your work becomes your life. Now, I promise you, when you do something like this, you don't want your dad to see it. That is a picture of the tractor we had. That is probably the spot that he told me not to drive through. And when you grow up on a farm and you have to work, you learn responsibility at a very young age. But the other thing that you do is you have a lot of time to think. Because when you drive one of those around in a circle for 5 hours, you have nothing else to do but think. Kids these days, we grow up with electronic devices in our hands. Science has clinically proven that it is through boredom that creativity is created. You know that. It is through boredom that creativity is often created. So the next time you go on a road trip and your kid wants an iPad in their face for 4 hours, just let them sit and look out the window for 3 hours, right? So, long story short, right? I grew up, I graduated high school like everybody else. I got into real estate. That's me on the far right. I started working for another gentleman, and I really quickly started to have a level of success in the real estate world that I didn't understand was abnormal. And what I mean by that is that when you a lot of times commit yourself to something, right? I started selling real estate when I was in college, and a buddy of mine had got me into it. And it was probably 6 or 12 months before I took and I looked at my production numbers, and I started comparing them to other people's. And I remember distinctly at a Christmas party, my brother pulled me aside and he's like, "What are you guys doing over there?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? We're selling houses. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right?" And he was like, "No, specifically, what are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, you guys are doing extremely well." And I said, "How well?" And he said, "Well, you are the highest selling rookie in the entire office." And I was like, "Well, that's interesting. How many more are there?" Okay? And it was one of those things where I didn't really understand or comprehend what was possible. And I bring this up because this is called the Think Big event. And sometimes the advantage that you have to thinking really big is when you don't know where the limits or the boundaries are, right? And as we get older in life, sometimes we've set these limits and those boundaries. And what I want to do today is to have you start challenging them, right? So, facts. Interesting story. When I started selling real estate, there was this thing called the intranet. Many of you maybe have heard of it. True story, right? The internet was a thing, but most business was done handshake to handshake. So you still printed off a list of houses, and I would drive to people's business and I would hand them a list of houses, right? If you wanted to use the internet, you had to go home and you had to unplug your phone from the wall. You had to ask your roommates if they needed it, and you had to plug a little thing in, right? So it was there, but it wasn't effective. And really what created a catalyst for me was I realized at a really young age that they would tell you that if you don't this, you don't last. Meaning that the old timers in the office would sit you down and they would say, "Listen, buyers are great, but you spend a ton of time driving them around in your car, And if you want to make some real money, you want to put a sign in the yard, you want to put some flyers in the box, and you want to put a flag that people see so they drive by. You can pick up buyers, you can pick up other listings. Listings were the leverage piece of the real estate business circa early 2000s, right? And what I started realizing with the internet was that I could leverage all of the houses on a website, and my overhead was little or nothing. I didn't pay for the signage, I didn't pay for the photography, I didn't pay for the lockboxes, but I could create a website, feature hundreds of homes, and now just work with the consumer that wanted the information. Make sense? It was just a bigger thought than anybody at that point in time was really having. And it was strange because I would walk down the hallway and I would talk to older agents in my office that had 20, 30, 40 listings under their belt. And I would say, listen, Sally, you're awesome, you're amazing. I want to be like you when I grow up someday. Hey, listen, I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called the internet, but I would love to feature your houses on my website. And you can tell your seller that you're getting them some extra market exposure, and if I can bring you a buyer, no harm, no foul, win-win. And they would say, sure, Keith, that's great. So the next thing you know, I was robo-posting ads on Craigslist. I was doing internet lead generation at a massive level, and I really quickly realized that I was generating more inquiries on a daily basis than I could physically handle, and then spawned a business, right? So now I'm tapping the guy next to me saying, call this guy, call this gal. Somebody do something with this because I had too much of it. Make sense? All of it spawned from just the idea that there was a bigger process. So instead of sitting in an office wondering how I was going to sell a house one month, I was asking myself how I was going to sell 100 houses a month. Right? And what happens when you're trying to sell 100 houses a month and you fall short by half? Well, you sell 50 and it's still rad. Right? Well, long story short, I climbed up the corporate ladder with another real estate firm. And I was literally their poster boy, right? I got to speak on stage, I got to teach classes, and after a couple of years, I think I've been in the real estate business about 4 or 5 years, I was asked to take on the leadership role in the office. So I became the team leader of my office. On paper, that role was known as the CEO. I was the chief executive officer of a real estate firm. I was 30 years old, and life was good. Right? And I had built this little empire, and I had a real estate team that worked for me and that sold houses, and I simultaneously was managing somebody else's business. And what I tell people is that dreams do come true, and you can't swim with dolphins. That's Big Mike. I don't think Big Mike is here, but that was our mandate trip. Somewhere along the line, I met a beautiful woman. We got married, and life was good. And then something happened that happens to a lot of people. And that is that life takes a turn. And here's the really cool thing about thinking big and creating plans. Life still doesn't give a shit, right? So I call this the crash and burn moment. That's from a Lime bike, actually. I told you I put this together in like a week, so I just took pictures off my phone. Do you remember that, Danny? I bet you do. Yes. Thank you for saving me.
You should tell the story.
So I was the CEO of a real estate firm. I had 170 agents in it. I had another team that I was working with as well. Life was great. And I got a call from my boss at the time, and he called me in his office and he said, "Hey Keith, we have a business planning thing on Thursday at 9. Will you meet at the office at 7? I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." I showed up at 7, and it was very quickly apparent that this was not going to be a long conversation. And the reality is that words were said. I don't think he ever said you're fired. I don't think he ever said I quit. But I walked out of that room and I didn't have a job. And at 31 years old, it was the first time in my life where I'd ever been like seriously rejected. Now, simultaneously, I'm married. My wife's 5 months pregnant, and it's 3 days before Christmas. That's a kicker, yeah. So I distinctly remember going home, and my wife was up in our master bedroom, and I went upstairs, and she's pregnant, she got a little belly bump. She turned, she said, "Sweetheart, how was your day?" And I remember I got both of her hands, and I said, "Everything's gonna be okay, but I don't have a job." And she was really sweet, but you could see the look in her face, right? It's different when you have a paycheck coming in every couple of weeks, right? And then all of a sudden that evaporates into thin air. And so what happened? Well, I made that face. Has anybody ever made that face before? This is my daughter. She's 6. Super side story, that is in South Lake Union in Seattle, they have some float planes. Have you guys ever seen them? They do little float plane tours over Seattle. That was her face right before takeoff. Are you having fun, Charlie? Yeah. So what happened? Well, to be honest with you, not a whole lot happened externally for about a year, right? On the outside, I had my first child, and I went about being a dad, but I did a lot up here, right? I did a lot of work up here, thinking about who I wanted to be, what I wanted to become, what life was going to look like, what the next steps were. And I did the exact exercise that I'm about to walk you guys through, which is called a mind map. And I sat down and I mapped out exactly what I wanted my life and my business and my entire world to look like. And when I did it, I made myself a promise. And I said, Keith, you're never going to shrink to what other people tell you is possible. Because one of the biggest fallouts I had with my old office was that they didn't like my vision. And I believed in my vision. So I said, I'm going to go create my own vision. Two of my other favorite quotes, that's a screensaver on my phone. But the reality is that they ring true, and there's a big differentiation. That quote on the left is from a guy named Billy Beane. Have you guys ever seen the movie Moneyball? Right? I hate losing even more than I love winning, and there's a big, big difference. I ask you guys this question, and I would encourage you to write it down. Am I winning? Every single aspect of your life, your relationships, your spirituality, your business, your finances, am I winning? Am I winning the financial battle? Am I winning my retirement battle? Am I winning the relationships with my spouse or my children? Every single thing that's important to you in life, I truly believe needs to have an instantaneous scorecard. So I know if I'm winning with my wife, if she feels loved and inspired. I have a goal that she feels that way. And let me ask you a question, gentlemen. Do you know if your wife feels loved and inspired? Oh, I guarantee you do, right? I guarantee you do. So the idea is that with your finances or your business or your life or your relationships, do you have an instantaneous scorecard? Do you know exactly where winning is and where losing is? Right? Because it's not all about winning, but damn it, I don't like losing. Right? And the second thing that I knew was that work. That's how you get it. Everybody's got their own story, and this is just mine, but the reality is that when you're 16 or 17 years old and you buck bales all day, trust me, when you wake up at 7 in the morning and you lift 80 or 90 pound bales in a barn all day with a mask on your face, it's 95 degrees out, and then you go and you drive a swather at night and you're putting in 16, 18-hour days. I worked more when I was 15, 16, 17 years old than most grown men do today. And what I knew wasn't that I was special. I just knew that I could do it. And the thing about that is that there's not a lot of people who can necessarily do that. Or if they're trying to do it when they're 50, right? And they didn't learn to do it when they were 15. Understand what your superpower is. Some of you are great communicators. Some of you are great relationship people. Some of you are great business people. Some of you are great family people. There's no right or wrong answer, but understand very clearly what your superpower is. For me, it was just the sheer fact that I could work day in and day out, right? So what happened? I said, so I left the office I was working at. I started my own firm. Don't do it, they said. It'll be a hassle, they said. I remember my CPA looking at me. His name's Tim Fromm. I love the guy. He's a huge nerd. I went in to do my taxes. I said, Tim, I'm starting my own firm. And the look on his face dropped 3 inches. And he was like, don't do it. And I remember thinking, like, what, Tim, what are you doing? He's like, Keith, I know you. You're awesome. You have huge ideas. He's like, you're not a detailed person. He's like, don't do it. And I was like, yeah, fuck you too. So I did it anyway. And I bought an old Masonic watch. And we converted it into the office. And some of you have been there. It's been a ton of fun. That's what it looked like when I bought it. Wow. That's what I launched a real estate office in. It was a little weird. It was a little weird. But But we did have microphones and speakers and a star on the carpet, so that was cool.
Why you change it?
I should have. But I was thinking big, right? Like I was just gonna do it. Egg crates and milk cartons and folding tables and chairs, I swear to God, for the first year. Phone cords running across the floor. Imagine buying a house and meeting your realtor there. You want to talk about selling? You gotta sell, right? But it was awesome. And that's what it looked like 6 months later. And that's what it looked like in the process. And now I've got cool floating hanging desks with a crane. Not too many real estate offices have a crane. But it's rad and I love it. A few years after that, I started a joint venture in Seattle. Brian's in the room. Is Brian in the room?
No.
But it was the same thing, right? Don't do it, they said. You're already in Spokane. You already have an office. Why would you diversify your attention, right? Why would you go to another city? Why would you go to one of the fastest moving real estate markets in the entire city, Keith, and think that you could go there and make an impact? But there are two things, right? We're going to get to this later, but I can tell you to write this down as well. There are two things in your life that you control that will have more effect on anything that you ever do. And the first one is how you think. And the second one is who you are in relationship with. How you think and who you are in relationship with. And I was able to get into a relationship with that gentleman right there, Brian Side, and then last year we just had our glorious 3-year anniversary party. And I'm happy to say that we have an office over there that does over 100 units a year, and it's thriving. Oh, North Hill. Start a restaurant, they say. It would be fun, they say. Don't do it, they say. Did that too. Launched a joint venture in Boise. Launched a bunch of Airbnbs, rentals, bought into a title company. Enough of me, really. The idea is that I just want you guys to know that there's a common theme through a lot of this, and it's the fact that you think big, you don't let other people tell you what you can do, and you create a plan, right? A big plan. This is where you're comfortable. This is where the magic happens. I want to inspire you tonight to think big, to put down a plan on paper that other people will laugh at, that other people will tell you not to do, that other people tell you is absolutely ridiculous, and then you know you're on the right track. So what does it look like? To the right there, that's my mind map. That's my real estate mind map. It is everything and anything that I plan on building in the next 15 to 20 years. I love this quote as well. It says, leaders are visionaries with a very poorly developed sense of fear and no concept of the odds against them. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you know it or not, regardless of where you're at in your life, you are a leader. You are a leader. Because everything rises and falls on leadership. If you own a business, you are a leader. If you're active in your church or your community, you are a leader. Inside of your family, you are a leader. There's a very good chance that you look around and you have a peer group that looks to you that you are a leader to. Right? So in front of you guys on page number, I think 7, is a mind map. This mind map is Walt Disney's mind map. You guys ever heard of a guy named Walt Disney? Take a second and look at this mind map. Look at all of the lines and look how extensive it is. And look at the back and forth. Now, just a little bit of a backstory, right? Walt Disney was born in 1901. He grew up during the Depression. He was a cartoonist when cartoonists did not really exist, right? He made little Sunday cartoons for the paper in black and white, and he sold them. He wanted to get into film production. This is at the point in time when films were a lot of times black and white, and they didn't have sound, and they were crossing over animation with film. Now ask yourself this question. By the way, he went bankrupt in 1923. At the age of 24 years old, I believe. Another 5 years later, he's living in California. Now, just comprehend this for a second. he tells his friends he's going to start a theme park with animals that walk around in costume based on animation characters he's drawn, right, in the middle of Anaheim, California. What are you saying to Walt Disney in this moment? You're nuts, right? You're nuts. But he believed, right? He knew what he wanted. He had a vision, and he cast that vision. So what I want for you guys is to turn the next page, and what you'll see is 2 blank pages, and I want you guys to take the next 10 minutes, and I want you to start your mind map. I want you to put a circle in the middle of that page, or in one of them, I want you to put me, right? Myself. And I want to spend the next 10 minutes with you guys, and I want to just give you the opportunity to create a mind map that interconnects anything and everything in your life, and I want you to think big. Fair enough? Seriously, this is a great exercise, you guys. This is also a great exercise to do with your family. If you have children or a spouse, it's a pretty cool thing to sit down and talk to them about what your life could look like if all the gloves were off, right? And I ask you this in earnest because it's a thing I have to remind myself all the time, but like, do you know what your children's hopes, goals, and dreams and aspirations are? Are you clear about that? Do you know what your significant other, your spouse's hopes, goals, or dreams or aspiration are, right? And imagine merging those mind maps, right? Because it's so much easier to have a life that's connected than to have 2 or 3 people doing different things on their own, right? My guess is you'll find common ground. So when you look at that mind map, let me ask you guys a question. How many people think that if you left this on the table and somebody else found it, they would think you were batshit crazy? Anybody? You guys didn't do it right. No, I'm kidding. How many of you guys think that if you showed this to your closest friends or family members that they would try to heed warning on multiple aspects of this mind map? Right? And understand there's nothing wrong with that, right? They're, again, going back to that fear mentality, they're trying to what? They're trying to protect you. They're trying to protect you from yourself, right? And that's okay. And that's okay. So let me ask you, give me 3 ahas. What were your 3 largest ahas when you were doing that? Anybody? Accountability. Tell me what you mean by that, Ty.
So I find myself, doing the right things, but if I'm the only one that is holding myself accountable, it is very easy to create distractions for myself, right? So if someone else is holding me accountable, or if I'm reaching out for someone else to hold me accountable, it really creates success for me, at least it has definitely in the past.
Perfect. Perfect. Good aha. Oh, nice. This makes sure that you guys get the good shit. I won't hold back any secrets. Anybody else? Give me 2 more ahas. What were your guys' big ahas as you were doing that quick exercise? Anybody? Yeah.
It was hard.
It was hard. What about it was hard, though?
It was hard to let myself think about it and then write it down without trying to overanalyze it before it got from there to there.
Right, and the cool thing about a mind map is when I mean gloves off, is that exercise is meant for you just to get it out, right? Don't think about systems, don't think about how. It's not about the how, it's about the what, right? And this exercise is just about getting it out. If you want to be, if you want to get your pilot's license tomorrow, and that's part of your mind map, don't worry about the how. Just get it out on paper, right? Put this into existence, right? And that's the cool part about a mind map, is that you are telling the universe your intention. What else? Cammie.
To piggyback off of that, I found that the biggest things that I have, like as far as my biggest reaches, are the things that I've given the least amount of time, and they're the things I'm the most passionate about. And so it's like kind of disheartening because this isn't like, oh, I came up with this last month.
Right.
It's been like a decade.
So you're noticing like reoccurring things on there, things that have been on there for a while or things that you've talked about for a while where there hasn't been action.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I have to give myself permission to like think outside of the box.
Right?
It's easy to stay in a rhythm and know like these are the action items I need to complete to accomplish this micro vision, but to allow myself to think creatively outside in a bigger picture, it was almost like I needed to break through that barrier to allow my mind to go there.
Right, to get into the macro.
Yeah, like the exercise of it.
Yeah, totally. Thinking big is a skill set. Understand that very clearly. Thinking big is a skill set. And the thing about skill sets is they grow when? When you practice them, right? Yes, Phil.
I was just saying, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's a big one for me.
Getting comfortable being uncomfortable. That's interesting. I have a quote that I say, and I don't know that a lot of people appreciate it, but it's the easiest way that I can think to explain myself in a variety of situations, and it goes like this. I have a very high tolerance, and I am very comfortable with other people around me being uncomfortable. It is really weird, isn't it? It isn't it, right? Let me ask you a question. When you're talking to your kids or when you're trying to mentor somebody and they're stumbling or searching for an answer, how much do you want to give it to them? How hard is it to sit there and watch them figure it out, right? But when you're talking about life, that's where the magic happens, right? We've all met those silver spoon kids that had everything handed to them. What did they ever learn? Not much, right? The struggle is the magic. So as you guys look at those mind maps, okay, I want you to continue to have thoughts. I want you to add to them as this goes on. I'm also going to be posing questions. And what I'm going to dive into right now is what I call the MS4. And this is my personal life kind of philosophy that I use towards business primarily. But what I've found is that it transcends basically every aspect of life. You can use this for physical fitness. You can use this for relationships. You can use this for your business, right? And MS4 stands for essentially 5 things. The first is the M, and that's mindset. And then there's 4 S's: skill set, system, schedule, and standards. Now, when you look at the foundation of the MS4, I always start with mindset. And the reason is because when you have a mind map like you just created, this quote rings true, and that is, everyone wants to be a cowboy till it's time to do some cowboy shit. The first question that I'm asked of you as you look at your mind map is, are you prepared to do it? Are you willing to put in the work? Right? So a lot of times when we create these esoteric, like, again, the very first slide I showed you, right? Like the unicorn shitting out a rainbow, right? It becomes that. It becomes nothingness because we have no commitment behind it, right? So as you look at your mind map, you have to look at your level of commitment. Now, the mindset is the first part of it, and I gave this to you guys before, but the answer is the 2 things that dictate every decision that we make in life, and the quality of it is how we think and who we're in relationship with. It's how we think and who we're in relationship with. Now, as you guys look at your mind map, I want you to write somewhere on that page thought, and I want you to write relationship. Because for every circle and for every topic you have, my question to you and the question that you should be asking yourself is this: how am I thinking about this? Am I thinking it's impossible? Am I thinking that it's going to take 5 years? Am I thinking that it's never going to happen, right? Am I thinking that it's going to be really hard? And who are you in relationship with about it? Every problem that you have in life can typically be solved with 1 of 2 things: either changing and reframing the way that you're thinking about that problem, and or creating a relationship around that problem. You don't like where you're at with your physical fitness? Create a relationship with a personal trainer who can train you, right? Not all trainers are the same, yes? So create a relationship around that issue. Having problems with your taxes? Create a relationship with the CPA. Want to get to the next level in your business? Who's there? Who can you talk to? And who can you create a relationship with? So as you guys look at your mind maps, that's what I want you to look for. I want you to look for gaps. Look for gaps in your mind map where either A, and like again, it's not about having the answer. It's just about identifying it. As you look at your mind map, where on your mind map do you need to maybe create new thought around it or create new relationship? My boy. One of the best quotes of all time. I know I'm going to get got, but I'm going to get mine, then I get got dough. I don't know. It's a mindset, right? It's how we approach things. So, take it or leave it, right? The guy could run a football. Who you are in relationship with matters. While I look at this mind map and I ask myself who I need to create relationship with, we also should be looking at maybe who I need to distance myself from. It's a tough conversation, guys. Sometimes it's your best friends. Sometimes it's your family, right? Sometimes it's the people you currently work with. Change is hard. We don't like change, right? How many of you in your life have Eeyores? Right? So a lot of this is about getting good at identifying them, right? It's about getting really good at who's going to support my mind map, who's going to support my objection, my hopes, my goals, my dreams, my ambitions, and quite frankly, who do I need to distance myself from, right? That photo on the right always cracks me up. That one friend who doesn't contribute much, but he's still a critical member of the squad. Again, asking yourself, the relationships that you have sometimes serve you well, and yet other times we can be very successful in spite of them. Who are you building around? Who are you building around such that they're not contributing, but you're finding ways just to make it work with them? Right? Because it would be a lot easier if they weren't around there, but sometimes they have value. But you need to understand this. I'm not saying you need to go and change every relationship you have in your life, but you also need to understand when you have this relationship, right? The next page of your book, I believe, has this chart, and it's really the mindset that relates to what I refer to as the be, do, have principle. And this principle was from a gentleman named Zig Ziglar. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him. But he was kind of a motivational and inspirational business guy in the 80s and 90s, and I think even the 70s. But what he talks about is the be, do, have principle. And what he essentially says is that our natural inclination, especially as we look at those mind maps and as we look at our lives, is that we tend to start with what we want to have, right? So I want to have a vacation home on the lake. I want to have a summer house. I want to have a pilot's license. I want to have a nice car. I want to have a great relationship with my wife. I want to have a lot of friends. And he says the problem is that you're now training your subconscious to want. You're now wanting to have. Understand that your mind doesn't associate between the difference between what you have and what you want, but you're training it to want and not have. Does that make sense? Because to have something, you have to want to have it, right? It's about intention. So the step that's above have is to do. So what happens is that we tend to think in order to have these things, there are things that I must do. In order to have a nice lake place, I need to do these tasks at work to make money so that I can have this nice lake place. Very rarely do we transcend this all the way back to being. So when you want to have a good relationship with your spouse, you can say, well, I need to do these things. I need to ask them how their day was. I need to involve them in my business. I need to take them out on a date night. I need to automatically do these things to make my spouse happy so that I have a good relationship with them, as opposed to transcending back into what kind of person do I need to be such that I will innately and naturally do the things that I need to do to have the things that I want to have. So if I'm a person who's intentionally focused on being a good communicator, I don't have to try to do that with my spouse. Does that make sense? I'm not doing communication. I'm just being a good communicator. And by being a good communicator, I do have good communication, and thus I have a good relationship, right? So as you look at your mind map, again, I ask you, if you really are serious about the things that are on there and living a big life, then we have to have this question in our mind, and who do I need to be to become that person? You follow? The last thing I'll tell you about mindset, this is a really tough one for me. My friend Jess Ross Kelly died this year. He was a mountaineer. He was the youngest American to ever summit Everest. And he was a good friend of mine, and we had a lot of fun in college, and we worked at a ski shop together, and it crushed me, man. It crushed me. The biggest thing I can tell you guys when you look at that mind map and when you look at your lives is that you're going to die. We're all going to die. And we don't get to choose how that happens. But that's why having a big life is important, because you only get this shot once. Jess had that tattoo on his chest. And it says, by endurance we conquer. The biggest hurdle that I see between people saying what they want in life and doing it is just the ability to endure what it takes to get there. So ask yourself when you look at that mind map, what does your level of endurance look like? Are you willing to put in the work? And then how are you going to fuel it? Right? Dark moment. So back to the MS4, right? It starts with the mindset. When we're looking at building a big life, the very first thing we need to do is we need to frame our mind around what it is that we need to do, what it is that we need to be, and how we're going to get there. Test our level of a commitment, right? Now, in my job and in my career, I've had the opportunity to hire and train a lot of young whippersnapper realtors and start their business, right? To grow a business. And the first thing that I do is I listen to how they think. And once I realize that an agent has a good mindset, right? They're committed, they want what they want, they have clarity around it. Now we have to move into a functional skill set basis, right? So one of the things that we talked about with thinking big is that the reason that people don't think big is because maybe they don't see the importance. The other thing is because they're scared. The other thing is that a lot of times it becomes fairy dust because we have these thoughts and we don't know how to scale. We don't know how to transcend. Right? So it's our skill sets that are going to make this happen. Fundamentally, if you want to start golfing tomorrow, right? I can take you out, I can give you a bag of clubs, you can stroke them all. Great, you have the fundamental skill set to golf. How does it work? Not so well, right? Repetitio est mata est stan. It means repetition is the mother of education. To build a big business and a life, there are basic skill sets that need to be mastered. There are basic skill sets that need to be mastered. And the biggest misnomer, you guys, is the tendency is to believe that since I know what to do, I am ready to do it. However, that simply is just not true. And this is where the seeking of knowledge ends and the development of skill sets begin. So I want you guys to frame in your mind a scenario where your skill set is not where you want it to be. And you don't have to share out loud, but just frame something in your mind. This conversation I'm about to have with you is something that was passed down to me at a very, very young age. And it was when I first developing my business. And a mentor of mine grabbed me and he said, Keith, I want to explain to you this concept called E to P. And this concept of E to P, again, can work with your health and your physical fitness. It can work with your relationships. It can work with your business. But essentially, as you guys look at that graph that's in your book on page, I don't know what page are we on?
14.
15, 14, 14. It's a concept called E to P. Now, what E to P is, you guys, understand is that what I say E stands for, right, is easy. The truth is, in the business world, a lot of times it stands for entrepreneurial. I don't know necessarily what businesses you're in, but what I can tell you about this is that a lot of times what attracts people to owning their own business? It's an entrepreneurial spirit, right? What attracts us about wanting to make our own way in the world, right? It's this innate draw inside of us to want to go out and to want to do it, right? To want to start a bar, a restaurant, to want to become a real estate agent, to want to become a personal trainer, right? To go into business for ourselves. And we naturally, as we get into it, begin to do what? We begin to operate with what comes easy for us, right? Or what comes natural. I don't care who you are in this room, you have a certain natural ability, and we all know people that have higher or lower natural abilities to communicate with people, right? To foresee obstacles, right? To work hard, to stay late. Some of us have innate ability with numbers, right? We all have things that come easy to us. Now understand this. When you focus on what you want to do and what comes natural to you, any business that you get into is going to have a certain level of success. Why? It's because yesterday you weren't in it and today you are, right? So your first month and a half as an insurance person starts with an upward trajectory, right? You're just getting better every day because you're learning and you're growing. And by the way, 3 weeks ago you weren't in insurance, right? So of course you're a better insurance agent today than you were 3 weeks ago. It didn't exist. Now understand this. Any time that you focus on what comes easy and what comes natural to you and you operate in E, you will have a certain level of result, right? That level of result is just called your natural God-given ability, okay? I know guys that can pick up a golf stick or can pick up a baseball, right? And you watch them and it's like they just can rocket that thing. And you're like, I could practice for 15 years, I don't have that arm, right? Like, there's certain God-given talents that we all have, right? Know your superpower. But the reality is that at some point in time when you wake up every day and you put your shoes and your coat on, or your shoes and your coat on, and you leave your house and you operate inside of E, you will have a natural level of achievement, right? And at some point you'll hit diminishing returns. Inside of your business, inside of your marriage, inside of your life. Now at that point in time you have a decision to make. And what I tell people is this. If you get into the real estate business and your goal is to sell 2 houses a month and your God-given natural ability can get you to selling 2 houses a month, what is your motivation to change? Nothing. Doesn't exist, right? Congratulations. If you can operate in E and you're happy with your life, don't change anything, right? However, what I find is that most people, when you push them, I'll find a natural discontent. In other words, you bump your head on a ceiling of achievement long enough, and you start to get tired, right? You start to get fatigued. And what happens is that if a ceiling of achievement that you're hitting through your natural God-given abilities isn't something that works for you, then one of 3 things happens, and it's right there on your chart. You get disappointed, you resign, and then you move on to greener pastures. And in my world, in 15 years in the real estate world, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. Real estate agents become lenders, lenders become insurance people become financial planners, and it goes like this. They get in, they're excited, they bang away, they don't have the level of success they want, they're not willing to change their activity, they like operating in E, so what do? They change their career path, right? So when you want more than your God-given natural talents, this E, right, we have to act in P. What is P? Purposeful. I was like, did you cheat? Did I write that down there? It's purposeful, right? So let me ask you a question. If operating inside of E feels natural and it feels easy and it feels safe, what does this feel like? Unnatural, uncomfortable, annoying, frustrating, angering, right? But ultimately, it's going to get us where we want to go. So when you look at P, here's the biggest issue. When I am somewhere and I hit a natural ceiling of achievement on whatever it is, the first thing I have to figure out is what it is that I want. So if I'm at 2 transactions a month and I want to go to 4 transactions a month, the first thing on this next block on page 15 is focus. I have to focus on what it is that I want. I need to get really clear about, I'm currently doing 2 transactions a month. I want to be doing 4 transactions a month. I'm currently training 10 people at the gym. I want to be training 50 people at the gym. Whatever your client base is, wherever you're trying to go, it's being clear about what it is that you want. Focus. The next one is options. What are my best choices for how to approach it? This goes back to that relationship conversation that I was talking to you guys about. Who do you know that's doing it? Who do you know that's doing what it is that you want to do? What are your options? By the way, there's probably a multitude of people doing it that do it differently. So now it's about selecting the one that best serves us. Don't search out somebody who's been a real estate agent for 1 year and kind of shot out of life like a cannon, and then you want to go model after what. Ideally, they're probably operating in E and they don't have much of a model or system at all, right? So the next is systems, right? Focus, what do I want? Options, what are my options? Model, what out there can I pick from that I can actually model? And then what will I build systems around? And as Ty brought up earlier, thank you, Ty, the last one is accountability. In order to sequentially move from where I am to where I want to go, I have to be able to focus on what I want, select the options that are available, build a model around it, put systems into place, show my face to this computer, and then ultimately I have to build in accountability. Again, going back to your mind maps, when you start asking yourself what sort of skill sets do I need to develop around those specific areas? What sort of relationships do I need to have? And then how do those correlate to accountability, right? Who in my life is going to hold me accountable? I started working out at the gym a few years back, and I really in my 20s, I felt like I'd lost my health and fitness. It wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, right? I spent too much time screwing around. I was an athlete in high school, but somewhere in my 20s, I just lost it, right? So when I got into my 30s, what I realized was that for me personally, what I had to do is I had to become accountable to another person. A lot of people can get up and go to the gym on their own every day, and I envy those people. But for me, I couldn't, right? And I wouldn't say that I couldn't because I had done it once before, but that's like going to the golf range and shooting your club one time, right? In order for me to do it and do it consistently, I had to have a commitment to somebody that wasn't myself. That was just me in that specific instance, right? So now I prefer group workouts. I prefer to have a one-on-one coach. I prefer to have group coaching, right? That's the way that I've been able to maintain my health and physical fitness. So when you look at your mind maps and when you look at where you want to go, what sort of accountability do you have to put in place? Maybe it's just a mentor, a person you meet once a week. Maybe it's your spouse, but maybe it's a collective, right? Maybe it's a whole. Systems and schedules. Everything we do more than once needs to have a system. When I coach and when I mentor other real estate agents, a lot of times what happens with this E to P conversation when someone's beating their head up against the ceiling, it's because they failed to develop a system. So they're constantly doing the little things that they don't need to be doing anymore because they haven't built a system around it, right? In your life and in your business, everything that you do more than once needs a system. Now understand that systems need to stay relevant and change to maintain efficiency. Understand systems must be invented and reinvented. Invented and reinvented. You guys understand if you're living a big life, there might not be a blueprint. There might not be a blueprint for what you're trying to do, which means that the onus on you is to invent them, right? And you can always stand on the platform of what worked, and you can die there as well. Early on in my real estate career, I mentioned I was robo-posting ads on Craigslist. This was this thing I was doing in like 2006, 2007. It was before search and IDX caught up with the real estate market. I was taking listings from other agents in my office. I was posting them on Craigslist. Other agents in the market started doing the same thing. Well, you guys know how Craigslist works, right? Like you post an ad and then the guy posts above you and your ad gets shoved down. What I figured out is that my click rate dropped by almost 48% as soon as I dropped off the first page, right? So then the goal was to stay at the top of the page. So now they would post, now I would post, now they would post, now I would post. But now I'm stuck to a computer. So I got some proxy rotators and some servers, and I and I hosted them out of like India, and I was robo-posting Craigslist ads, 150 posts an hour. They didn't like me so much. But I was thinking big, right? How do I create a system around this triviality? Now let me ask you a question. Do you think I post Craigslist ads anymore? No, it's gone, man. It's gone. Nobody uses Craigslist to look for a house. I mean, said nobody. Very few people, right? Because now you have search, you have IDX, you have your phone. So I could have died on that platform too, right? I could still be at home right now posting Craigslist ads, right? Wondering why my business was tanking. It evolves. Don't get stuck on your system. A huge part of building a quality system is tracking the results. Numbers are the language of business. Numbers are the language of business. I have taken my real estate career and I've been able to transcend into a variety of businesses. Property management, right? Rentals, still real estate related. I have a bar and a restaurant, right? I just analyzed a coffee shop the other day for a good client of mine. Here's the thing about numbers. They don't lie. The biggest hurdle that I see most young entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with is they don't track their numbers. And now you don't have a frame of reference. So I could be the smartest business consultant that you've ever seen. But if you come to me and I say, hey, Chris, what's your business currently look like? And you're like, well, I sell 100 homes a year. I say, great, where do they come from? Well, I don't really know. I mean, some of them are my friends and my family. Some call off my signs. Some I get at open houses. And it's like, well, how many? How many open houses do you hold? Well, I don't know. Well, it might behoove you to track these things, right? Numbers are the language of business. When you don't know your numbers, you cannot speak intelligently about your business. That's just the way that it is. You have to track activity. Results do not come from what we do, nor from what we... I don't know, what's it supposed to say? No, sorry, you're right, Johnny. Results do not come from what we do, nor what we know. Results come from what we do consistently. You guys, the biggest misnomer, and you guys, I know you've seen this with your kids or something, right? Or people, you're talking to them, you're explaining something, and they're like this. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, Dad. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, knowing it doesn't equate to doing, or even the realization of what you're doing half the time, right? There's a disconnect between knowing and action, right? It doesn't come from knowing, and it doesn't come from doing what? Once. So there's this thing with consistency in life. What's better? Working out a half hour a day, or going to the gym 1 day a week and working out for 7 hours? Right. There's some consistency that comes into play. Sorry, guys. This thing time's out on me. Right? MS4, mindset, skill set, systems, schedule, standards. Every system we have needs to have a schedule built around it. Every schedule we have needs to have a system built around it. As you look at your mind map, again, asking yourself, what system do I need to put in place? How does this correlate to a schedule, right? Last but not least, you guys, standards. You get what you are willing to accept. Bar none, everything I talked about today means absolutely nothing if you do not hold it to a standard. Right? We can meet and we can create the perfect workout schedule for you. The perfect system. What lifts to do and what time to do them and how to do them. But if we don't hold ourselves to a standard of doing them 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week, what good is it, right? I can have wonderful mindset about business growth and development. But when I fail to hold myself to a standard to show up to work every day, I have a problem, right? That's that analogy of kind of like the prima donna. Whenever you talk to a really good coach, whether it's professional or college, and you say, what would you rather have? An average to upper end athlete who works their ass off every day and is consistently there, or a fucking star athlete that you can't depend on? Doesn't matter how good you are if you're inconsistent. Now the next exercise we're going to do, you guys, we're going to get into is basically a life assessment. It's for you guys to take the mind map that you have, and there's an assessment. It starts on, I believe, page 21. It's about, as we look at our life, and we look at where we want to go, what sort of skills do we currently have and what sort of skills do we currently need? What I want you guys to understand is that I got a pen around here. In one of these pockets I got a pen. Hold on. Big lives and big businesses grow based on perspective. So the last exercise was a mind map. A mind map is about really the goal, right? Or the objective. It's where I want to go, right? Sitting down and mapping my life, I'm saying, I am currently here, this is where I want to go. One of the biggest misnomers, though, is that we fail to have proper perspective on where we're currently at. That's what this life assessment is. Does that make sense? See, perspective is where I currently am, the goal is where I want to go, and the vision is the journey. So I get to create what I want it to look like. The goal is where I want to go, perspective is where I'm at, the vision is the journey or the path. Make sense? So if you guys want to turn to page 21, and it's about a 3-page assessment, 21 through 23, and it's just a rating, right? Hold on, stay with me one sec. It's just a rating, right? And what you do is you answer these honestly. You cannot have perspective if you're not honest with yourself. If you don't work out 5 days a week, be honest about it, right? If you don't have that great of a relationship with your kids or your spouse, be honest about it. If your finances are not where you want them to be honest about it. But ultimately, you score it, and at the end, we're going to create a wheel out of it. And you guys see the example of the wheel there, right? Why do we want a big life? We want a big life because monster trucks drive over shit, man. Right? Skateboard wheels get stopped by a little baby pedal. If you think small, it's easy to be stopped. When you think large, you're unstoppable. Life will happen to you. And ultimately, a lot of people are driving around on flat tires. And we're fooling ourselves into something that we're not, and really what we're doing is we're doing damage. We're doing damage to our businesses, we're doing damage to our families, we're doing damage to our lives because we're driving around on flat tires. So you guys take a quick sec, do this life assessment. I'm going to turn a little bit of music back on, give you guys like 10 minutes to punch through it, and then we'll go from there. When you guys get done, there's a wheel on the next page. Chart your graphs. I want to skip forward to what I think is one of the more valuable pieces in this, and it's called a 135. It's on page 33. I use a 135 to develop my annual business plan every year, right? But these transcend business in the sense that you can build a 135 based around anything, and every business I run has a separate 135. A 135 is a basic instrument, but what it does is, again, it scales you from that point A to point B place because it gives you a realistic plan to get there, right? So what I want you guys to do is I want you to pick a topic in your life. If it's your business, then make it about your business, right? If it's your family life, if it's your health, whatever it is, pick a topic, and I want you guys to walk through a 135 exercise. Understand something basic though. On a 135, the one thing at the very top of the page is your main objective, right? So in the real estate world, I meet with agents all the time, and their one main objective, right, might be to become a top 100 agent in Spokane, right? That might be their overarching business objective, right? To become one of the top realtors in Spokane, to make the top 100 list, right? 3 goals that then support that objective. Make sense? Understand an objective is not finite, meaning it doesn't have an end, right? So an objective needs to be something that is a mission-based that will keep driving. Does that make sense? A goal, though, has to be finite. So if a goal has to have a timeline and it has to have a date. Make sense? So if my objective is to be a top 100 agent in Spokane, then one of my goals might be to list and sell 50 properties a year, right? Has a number, 50, has a timeline, 12 months. Make sense? Another goal might be to effectively work and sell 20 buy-side transactions. That might be goal number 2, right? It's 20, it's inside a year, right? To pick up 15 new accounts by June. That's a goal, right? Has a timeline, has a number, it's finite. Supports the objective. Now, each strategy supports the goal, okay? So if my goal was to pick up 50 new accounts by June, right, regardless of the business I'm in, then strategy number 1 might be call 5 new businesses a week. Strategy number 2 might be hand out 15 business cards a week. Strategy number 3 might be, right? So that it's the strategies that will effectively move the ball forward with that goal. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to look at a 1-3-5, and I want you guys to hash out a 1-3-5 for some aspect of your life. Health, fitness, communication, family well-being, business. What is the overarching objective that you're trying to achieve? What are the 3 goals that will support that objective? Okay, you guys, again, out of sake for your time, the most important thing for me today is to get you guys thinking bigger and to give you the tools that will help you. So feel free to finish this. What's the biggest aha you're having while you're doing this?
That I don't start work early enough.
That you don't start work early enough. That's a good one. What else? Yes, Aaron.
Writing it down makes it real.
Writing it down makes it real. How many of you guys are able to write like 3 or 4 or 5 things and then you just run out of things to write? Nobody? Just me?
Once I get to the 3 or 4.
All right, well, what the heck with you guys then? No, I mean, one of my biggest ahas when I do this every year is that it's hard, right? It's not just easy. I mean, it's like you have to put some thought into it, right? Like whatever that objective is, a lot of times we have an objective in our mind and then we don't really know what like the primary 3 things that we should be doing that support that objective are. We haven't really set aside the time to think about it a whole lot, right? And there's some power and some clarity that comes being like, hey, if I want to get my pilot's license to fly a plane, like here's the 3 things that I need to focus on to make that happen, right? So there's some power and clarity in that. And what I would encourage you guys to do is to finish this, right? To finish out that objective, the strategies, the goals, and then just to know this is a tool. As you guys will see behind that, there's a thing called the 411. And this is exactly how I do my annual planning, you guys. I sit down and I do a mind map exercise, just like we did at the beginning of this, right? Where I map out what I want my world to look like. Then I transpose a 1-3-5 for the things that are on my mind map. So every aspect of my mind map has a 1-3-5 that we just looked at, right? 1 overarching objective, 3 goals, and 5 strategies. Then I transpose my 1-3-5 into a 4-1-1. Okay? What is a 4-1-1? 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. So if you look at this 4-1, it says business, financial, spiritual, physical, relational, mental. What is my vision, right, for my spiritual well-being? What is my vision for my finances? What am I going to do this year? What am I going to do this month? What am I going to do this week? This is not complicated, you guys. There's an expression, I don't know who said it first, but I love it, and it is success is simple, it's just not easy. Right? Success is simple, it's just not easy. It's sequential growth. Too often than not, I meet entrepreneurs and young, ambitious people that really end up getting thwarted by this overly ambitious urge to do this, to grab a million things and to try and move forward at once. Success is sequential, right? One of the reasons that I put this seminar on about how to think big, and one of the reasons that this all came about, and I put a little teaser on the video, was a lot of the questions that I get are how. Keith, how did you do it? How do you manage it all? How do you keep up with it? How do you business plan? How do you make your dreams or your hopes a reality? The reality is that I just use systems, right? So it's one of those things where we overcomplicate it, but sometimes we grab too much. Success is sequential, meaning 1 domino at a time, right? So I'm going to let you guys out of here. The last 2 things I want to bring you guys' attention to are these back 2 pages. The one chart is a relationship chart. And I want you guys to use this. I didn't show it to you earlier because I didn't want you to cheat off it with your mind maps. But I want you to look at this relationship chart, and this will really help you with your mind mapping exercise. When you look at your life, what reciprocal relationships do you have? Who in your life do you determine wealth for? Your boss, the company you work for, your family? Who in your life determines wealth for you? Other people in your family, past clients, friends, right? These relationships are what will help you fill that mind map, right? Who are you getting spiritual counseling from? Who are you getting physical fitness counseling from? Who determines those relationships, right? And are they reciprocal? Does that make sense? On page number 36, I hand this to you guys because I encourage you. It's one of my favorite charts. I actually had to recently recreate this. I put this on Facebook a while back. It was a screenshot, but it's so blurry you couldn't read it, and I had a lot of people ask for it. I would highly encourage you, if you are a parent or a business owner or anybody, to tear this page out when you get home and stick it on your refrigerator. It is an awesome tool to walk people through when they have an issue. Because the reality is right in the middle is that life shows up. Because as I said before, you can make all the plans that you want, but life doesn't really give a shit, does it? But the reality is that life shows up, and then we get to choose whether we go up this chart or down this chart. So when I said to you that a lot of times when I hire new individuals, I listen to how they think, I listen to how they speak, these are the tickers I'm listening to, right? When something bad happens, where do they go? That's not the way it is. That's not how I see it. That's not my perception. If everybody would just do their job, right? Nobody told me. It's not my job. I did my part. I wasn't given a chance. If it's meant to be, it will happen. This is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Sorry. Okay? I hate that, right? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. No. That's not the way it is, right? We can't control every situation, but we have a choice. So when you listen to people, acknowledge reality. This is what it is, right? Something bad happens, it is what it is. I don't like it, but I have to acknowledge it is what it is. Own it. If it's up to me, or if it's meant to be, it's up to me. What do I want? I've got to do something. This is my responsibility. What are my options? Let's get started. Let's go, right? Be a doer. My slide deck shut off again. Oh, man. Before I kick you guys loose, I will take you back to yes, page 19. Here's the deal. Going around and around and around in that tractor when I was a young child, I had a lot of time to think. When I was in college, I ended up graduating with a philosophy degree. Maybe I think more than most people are probably like to. But one of my fundamental beliefs is that people don't spend enough time thinking. We just don't set the time aside, right? Life's busy, we get caught. So when you think about how you agree to live your life, this is just the personal code that I agree to live by, and I want you to understand that this was an evolution. And I want to run you through it really quick, but I just want to give you guys a scope of it's your life, so the cool part is that you get to make the rules. The other thing is that you get to own it. So if you're going to live a life and you're going to live a big life, you might as well have the code that you agreed to live by. In my world, the first and foremost understanding of anybody, the thing that I will tell anybody, is don't be a victim, right? Life is not externally happening to anybody more than it's happening to anybody else, right? We have a conscious decision to create reality. not to accept reality. That quote. Do sharks complain on Monday? No. They're up early biting shit and chasing stuff and being scaring and reminding everybody they're a shark. Listen, you don't have to be a shark, but you also could get eaten by one. Don't be a victim, right? Don't let the world happen to you. I'm not going to say bad things aren't going to happen to you, but it is a choice. The biggest thing is that when we look at life and the hurdles that we run into, sometimes that's not big enough for us, though. And what I mean that honestly and sincerely, is a lot of times that's easy to say, right? But a lot of times, have we ever had a big problem in our life and someone's like, oh, don't be a victim about it. And like the only thing you can think is that you just want to punch them in the face, right? And one of the reasons that I found that you want to punch them in the face, and one of the biggest things when I came to training and consulting new business owners, was a lot of times they weren't thinking big enough. A lot of times they were going into victim mode, right? Like not wanting to just tackle the tough things. But sometimes it wasn't about like not wanting to tackle some things. Sometimes it was they didn't know what to do. If I can give you another piece of advice, it's stop hiding behind I don't know. I don't know is the biggest phrase that a victim says on planet Earth. That's the biggest ticker that I hear, right? Your business is here, you want to be here, what should you be doing? I don't know. I don't know. Right? Really? Right? You come into a room, little Billy's crying, older Billy has his hand raised. It's like, what are you crying for? Oh, I'm pretty sure you do, right? So a lot of times the phrase, I don't know, it's a place to hide. And we hide behind I don't know because it's easier to hide behind I don't know than it is to figure it out. That very first or second slide I showed you with a tractor stuck in mud up to its axle, listen to me. I'm not saying you have to have all the answers, but it is your responsibility to figure it out, right? So if you truly adopt a non-victim mindset and you truly commit to figuring things out, this is the next question I get from people. And they say, listen, Keith, I get it. I'm mentally strong. I get it. I want to grow a big business. I'm trying to figure it out and I'm struggling. What should I do? You do the best you can. That's the answer in any scenario. I would tell every employee that works with me, I would tell every person I was ever in business with, if you wake up every day and you have a non-victim attitude and you're trying to figure shit out and things aren't going your way, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, did you do the best you can? And if you can look me right in your face and be like, dude, I'm doing the best I can, we got no problems. We got no problems. I'm never going to be upset or angry at somebody who's owning it, who's figuring it out, and is doing the best that they absolutely can. Right? But do we ask that question of ourselves? Are you doing the best you can? In your relationships, in your business, in your life? Because this event is called Think Big, right? In order to think big, we have to be big. And the question is, are you doing the best that you can? I can raise my hand on a lot of days and say no. And the trick isn't to beat yourself up over it, it's just to recognize it, right? Rule number 4. So this rule came about actually from some of the people I do work with, and they're like, Keith, yeah, we're great. You're the mindset guy. I get it. Awesome. Good for you, buddy. And by the way, we're figuring it out and we're working really hard, but you're kind of a dick, right? You can be kind of a dick. And the reality is that we all can. Because when you're driven and you have a mission and you want to live a big life, the biggest thing I can tell you is to have empathy with other people, right? It's to do the best you can, and it's to figure things out, and it's to own the outcome and to understand that not everybody's on your path, and you can't just mow through people to get there. So you can have success, and you can have fun, and you can make a lot of money, and you can be happy, and you can also not be a dick in the process. Last and not least, focus on the positive. I love this quote on the left. If you choose not to find joy in snow, you will have less joy in your life, but still the same amount of snow. There are things in life that are unavoidable, right? We all have trials, we all have tribulations. Understand you are not alone, but also understand it's not an excuse, right? Secondly, going back to the empathy, just because someone carries it well does not mean it's not heavy. For the most part, people are doing the best they can. They are. But not always. And it's still okay to push them. We talked about the life assessment, the annual calendaring we didn't get to. I left you guys with some tools. The last thing I'll tell you with is when you guys go to live a big life and you're creating these mind maps and you're moving forward, you're naturally going to run into hurdles, and it's going to be your own mind that stops you, right? It's going to be all the things that you were told as a child. Stop, drop, and roll was such a big deal as a kid. I really thought I'd be on fire more as an adult. How many of us and how many times do we run into situations where the reality is that what we think about things and what we've been told about things just simply isn't true, right? We have to throw the garbage out. We have to realize that sometimes the people that are trying to protect us just care about us, and they're giving us advice about things that are probably never going to happen in our life, right? Lou Holtz has a great quote, and what I want to leave you guys with tonight is that there's a lot in this book. I would encourage you to dive into it. I also would encourage each and every single person in this room to reach out to me if you ever want to go have a cup of coffee or a beer and talk further about any of these things. I did this tonight on a whim. It was at the suggestion of a friend. I'm so happy and appreciative that you guys showed up. Like, truly, honestly, my goal is that you just get value out of this. I got nothing to sell you. I got nothing to give you. My goal is that you go into 2020 and you absolutely crush it. That you make that mind map happen, that you put a system in place, and that you go from point A to point B, and that you pass it on, right? Just pay it forward. So Lou Holtz has a great quote, because if what you're coming out of tonight is that maybe you have a flat tire, or if what you're coming out of tonight is that maybe I haven't thought about a lot of this stuff, or maybe I don't have a game plan in place. Lou Holtz was coming off a losing season as a college football coach, and this is a famous quote. He said, "We aren't where we want to be, we aren't where we should be, we aren't where we're going to be, but thank goodness we're not where we used to be." And as you leave this room tonight, I just want you to know that regardless of what situation you were facing before you walked in here tonight, know that you're not where you used to be, and moving forward is going to be positive, and it's up to you. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you very much.